Hey, welcome to the Best Gay Sex Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Trevor Hoppe. Today's episode is about slut pride. Pride? Come again? I know. Most of us use the word slut as a weapon, as a way to try to tar and feather someone else with the stigma of sex. We use the word slut to try to check someone whose sexuality we think is maybe a little too free, especially women and gay men. And like tar, the label slut is sticky. It tends to follow you for life. But today's guest thinks we've gotten it all wrong, that it's time to reclaim slut not as a source of shame, but as a source of pride. Charles Sanchez has been working for over 2 decades as a writer, director, and actor to try to shake up American norms around sex and sexuality. His original web series titled Merce follows the life of a gay man living with HIV in New York City. And it features an original song called The More You Can Hoe. It really is amazing. Please check it out on YouTube. I'll let Charles describe his work a little bit better than I can. Let's listen in. Charles Sanchez, welcome to the Best Gay Sex Podcast.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure to have you and hear you talk about your work. But before we get to today, tell me and people listening a little bit about kind of where you grew up and became a sexual being.
Okay, I grew up in Phoenix, Arizona. I am the youngest of 4, very Catholic, very Mexican, my oldest brother and my sister are born-again Christians. And so that was also a big, Jesus, sinners in the hands of an angry God. That's kind of what I feel like that whole
right.
Was.
Okay.
So that covered a lot of my sexual awakening. I remember. Wow. Okay. I remember. There were some boys in my neighborhood that we were all kind of discovering sex things at the same time, like looking at Playboy and things like that. Penthouse, which, you can see into the tomorrow's future by looking at the pages of Penthouse. And, that didn't really interest me except that everybody was naked in it. So there was that. And then I discovered the pool jets on my penis. That was exciting. That was probably around 13 or 14. So does that count as sex?
It's definitely getting there.
And my first real encounter was probably not until I was about 18. I had some petting things with boys and stuff, and certainly had some petting things with girls. Squishy. Girls are just squishy. That was just squishy. Anyways. But my first real sexual encounter, I was 18. And I remember I was so excited afterwards. I didn't eat for 2 days. I was just excited.
Wow.
Yeah. 18.
What was it like? Where did you meet this person?
I met this. Wow. Remember when you asked if you could ask anything? And I said, oh, yeah, ask anything. And now I'm like, oh. I met this person at an adult bookstore. And because no one ever checked your ID at the adult bookstore. And looking back, I can't believe they ever let me in. I looked like I was 16 until I was about 35. So when I was 16, or I must have looked 12, but they let me in anyways. And so that's where I met this guy, and we went back to his hotel room, and because he was saying I was living in Phoenix. He was in from New York, ironically. And so that was that. And we had this little on again, off again thing, whenever he was in the city, or when I moved to New York, he was the first person to take me to gay bars in New York City when I moved here when I was 19.
Wow.
So we had a little something for a while, but
that's really tender. And kind of a gay mentor.
Yeah. The first night he took me out in New York City, we went to the Monster, which is there's a piano bar on the top floor. Then you go to the basement and there's a disco. So it's 2 bars in one. And we went to a couple different other places, and we ended at what I think was this sex club that was called Jay's at the time. And but I'd never been in anything like that before. And I remember looking over and thinking, like, wow, that guy looks like he has a hand inside him. Oh my God, that guy has a hand inside him. So yeah, that was one of my first New York experiences.
That's a brave initiation, going straight to New York City sex club.
I was just taking that. Like, I didn't know what I was doing. I was like, okay.
How did you figure out what to do with people?
I'm still trying to figure that out. Because I think it was a lot of this. And people ask, like, asking me to do certain things and stuff like that. I remember one of my first experiences with a man when I was like 17, 18, around that same time. Because then I was like experimenting. I remember at one point going home with this guy and afterwards thinking, if that's gay sex, I'm not gay.
Wow.
Because it was so just like nothing and boring and like it wasn't hot at all. And when you're 18, everything's so for it to not be I really was like, well, maybe I'm not gay. I was.
Wow. Well, yeah, turns out, spoiler alert. What was so, it was just boring? It was chemistry?
Boring. There wasn't any chemistry. At least I didn't feel any chemistry. I mean, it seemed like the other guy did. Because he wanted to see me more afterwards. And I was like, oh, sure, I'll call you.
Yeah.
But it was just like there was nothing, there was no excitement. And I mean, the excitement part for me was just like having sex. It was like, and it wasn't, I wasn't fulfilled. I didn't feel like it was this great time. I didn't know what I was doing. And so, yeah, I think that's why that time was just so disappointing. And opposite of the time with the other guy when I was so excited I couldn't eat for 2 days.
Yeah, the eating thing is fast. I've never heard that response, but that must have been pretty good because
it was fun. And well, I think part of it too was feeling that I was attractive. It was one of the first times I felt, because the boys in high school, the boys I grew up with, even if they were gay, they weren't going to show it in 1985, 86. So I had very little feeling that I was attractive in any way. And so I think that was part of that time with this guy. His name was Scott. Was so exciting because I knew that he thought I was attractive. And I think that's part of what got me excited.
Yeah, no, it's nice to be wanted, for sure. That can feel amazing. Yeah. When did you move to New York City after Arizona, or
I grew up in Arizona and I moved to New York the first time when I was 19 to go to acting school.
Wow.
And then I can't believe my parents let me do that at 19, but they did.
Yeah.
And then at around 30, I moved to Los Angeles for a few years. And then I lived in Little Rock, Arkansas for about 8 years. And then I moved back to New York in 2007.
Okay, so you have bopped all over.
Yeah.
What do you feel like where did your it sounds like maybe New York is where your sexual awakening happened, where you became a sexual being.
Yeah, I feel like, when I was growing up at home, I was so limited by family and by, and what I felt like, and I didn't know what being gay was going to be like because it was all in my head as being this abomination and you're going to, burn in hell and all those kinds of things that I was taught, or that I believed, that I not only was taught that, but I went, oh, that matches my own self-hatred. So I might as well stick with that. So yeah, it wasn't until I moved to New York that I really felt free enough away from my family and away from those limitations to experiment. But I didn't really come out to my family until I was 30.
Mm-hmm.
So I was really still scared. And that was I think judgment and abomination and those kinds of things really affected my sex life and my well-being until I was probably about 50. I finally started getting rid of shame around that.
That is a journey. What was the process like to relinquish that shame? How did you get through that?
It was a long, it was a long journey from whatever coming out, starting to realize it myself in my late teens and late 20s, and then starting to come out to friends, and then finally coming out to my family. But the shame was so ingrained. It was so, before I knew what gay was, I was told it was an abomination, before I even could realize that was me. It was so easy for me to just hate myself, and feel like the sex that I enjoyed was demonic or was satanic or evil. And I think it just took all those years of therapy and self-love and getting rid of chemicals out of my life and things like that I was using to cope, before I went like, wow, there is no reason for me to be ashamed of my sex. I was created this way. I was made this way. And people who think otherwise, that's the abomination. Is if your church is teaching you how to not love certain people, then that's not a good church.
Amen to that. Preach. I mean, that's real. And I feel like for so many gay men, that shame is a fundamental aspect of their sexuality. I know so many gay men who struggle with that. What would you tell a young queer person who's living in that shame? Like, how do you push beyond it?
I don't know. I mean, I think that shame is built into sex in America across the board. We were founded by these religious zealots, people who got kicked out of their own country because of their religion, came here to start a country. So I think that shame, and shame about sex is something that's just American. That certainly they don't have it in the same way in other countries in Europe. But when you realize that, everybody has a sex life, hopefully, right? Everybody has their own sex journey, and to judge yourself for it is just not helpful. Embrace those parts of yourself because they're fun.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's you just have to go through the journey yourself. Unfortunately, I think that everybody has to find it for themselves. But anytime you start feeling shame and it's not fun, because it could be part of a fantasy. Shame could be part of a thing, part of a kink. But when it's not fun, that's when you need to do some self-examination. Maybe you find a therapist, or at least talk to some friends to get you out of that mindset. Because there's no reason, if you're having sex that is not hurting anybody else, then there's no need for shame.
Would shame fuel the sex you were having?
I certainly think that it informed how I felt about myself. And so then it did inform hiding and secrecy, and even from other gay friends, I didn't want to talk about the experiences I was having or the experiences that I wanted to have. That was something that I was like, ooh, I don't know about these certain experiences that I'm interested in, but I don't know how to even go about getting them. How do I express to someone that I want to feel what it feels like to be tied up, or I want to experience these sort of taboo subjects. So it took me a long time to even get there myself, to even feel like I could try certain things or express certain things.
And I guess with the shame, I know many friends who struggled with the shame. Often the substances come with that. And I heard you mention chemicals. And was that a link for you, the shame and substances?
I think so. I wouldn't have told you that at the time. I didn't have that much awareness, but I think they went hand in hand. I think it made a lot of things easier, especially alcohol because alcohol is so prevalent and it's so part of American culture and part of gay culture. And I used to have a joke about, when you go to a regular bar and order a gin and tonic, it's gin and tonic. And when you go to a gay bar, it's gin and tonic. There you go. It's like that they know that you need a little help.
It's so true. Gay bars are known for having strong pours. And I hadn't really connected that in my head, but you're right. There could be something kind of secret messaging going on there.
Do you think it's
Like, when do you, I guess when I'm thinking about like people listening, like the not fun thing, I think is such good advice. And it's sometimes like, how do you know? It sounds so stupid, right? How do you know it's not fun? You like know, obviously, but like, how do you know that it's not just normal kind of sexual exploration, but it's actually kind of self-destructive or harmful behavior?
ooh, it's rough. Because I think, we're not given any kind of sex education as gay men or as
Yeah.
anybody in the queer community. We're even regular sex ed for cis straight people is very rare. We still hope that our families are going to tell us, and most of us just have to learn on the street. But and gay men, we're not given any. All we have is like porn and talking to friends. So I think it's really, really rough to figure out like what kind of sex do you like? What kind of sex do you find pleasurable? What are your boundaries? Where is it okay to extend those boundaries for yourself? So I think that's why it's taken me so long to get to a place where I can, at least talk about the kind of sex that I like and the kinds of sex that I want, which are varied from day to day, which sometimes I want more cuddly, more romantic, and sometimes I want to be slapped around.
Yeah. Amen. It varies indeed. And for me, I guess I think a lot about how I've learned to be a sexual person has been framed in part by having by kissing a lot of frogs, by having some bad experiences. Have there been bad experiences that you think of that, even if they were bad, kind of were instructive, that helped you grow and have better sex in the future?
Certainly I've had, bad experiences. And it's not about like what you, the people will say, the size queens, size matters and stuff like that. I've had incredible sex with guys who were not big at all, who actually, when I figured it out, I was like, oh, this is going to be a disappointment. How do I get out of this? And then, oh my gosh, it ended up being like, this was really fun. You were really terrific.
Yeah.
So it has nothing to do with those kinds of things. I think even like, oh, he's too fat or he's too whatever. For me, I'm attracted to a lot of different kinds of people. So like those limitations, that has nothing to do with it. It's all about what's going on in your brain and what's going on, what you like, what we like together and who we are as a couple, or as not even a couple. It might be three, it might be four. But who we are in this situation. I think the bad experiences mostly are times when I felt unsafe. And so my advice is, if there is ever a time when you feel unsafe, get out of that.
Yeah.
That's and sometimes it's hard. I've been in situations, especially when I was younger, and I didn't, when you don't know what's appropriate or what's normal, what you want, even when I had to like fight somebody to get out the door.
Really?
Yeah. And because especially when you're young, and maybe if you're vulnerable, so you're using chemicals to loosen yourself up, then you're not thinking clearly. You're not able to distinguish what this person's saying, what I really want, or even gauge fear, your own feelings. So those kinds of things I think did inform my safety, what I consider safe, who I consider that I'm going to let this boundary down for this person in this situation because I feel safe, or because we have set up a boundary that I feel comfortable with. And those do take a lot of trial and error. If there's a book about it, I don't have. Yeah. If there's a how-to book, I probably should have gotten that.
Do you identify as a top or a bottom? Is that a word, labels that you?
I'm a bottom, which it's so funny. I hear a lot of people say like, everybody's a bottom, and I never have a problem finding a top.
Yeah.
So I don't know what those other bottoms are doing or looking for, but that's it took me a while to acknowledge that and to feel. That's another thing that even in the gay community, we're kind of shamed for being a bottom, and most of us are bottoms. But there is a shame level, and I'm like, and tops are guilty of it, of shaming us. Well, without us, where would you be? You'd be, so
Yeah.
it's a weird thing that we do to ourselves.
It is, and it's internalized too, right? It's we literally do it to ourselves, like in our own brains, and it's really hard to kind of break through it. And when you actually, like, as a social scientist, I've actually looked at top bottom like label identification, and like there are just as many tops as bottoms, like at least self-identified. But there is this mythology that's kind of fueled by bottom stigma. It's just like, bottoms, it's like, come on.
But you need us. You want us.
And like also we are, bottoms say this too, it's like, but we are like, have some pride. Like, it's hard to feel proud about that label, even though in the face of all this, like, negative energy. So I feel that just owning that, and especially in those experiences where you're confronted with another human being and saying no as a bottom, I think, in my experience, I don't know, what about you? Do you feel like that's especially challenging or differently challenging as a bottom?
I don't know. I have come to feel like my own power as a bottom. Like I really I've had a lot of different kinds of experiences. I was in a big relationship where I was as a sub with a master for about 1.5 years, and that informed a lot of where I realized like my agency. And when you're in that kind of a situation where the power structure is set up, like he's the master, I'm the not. But I found like, where my power really was, even in that dynamic, where it looked like, he had the power, but I always had the power to say like, no, or stop, or I need a break, or any of those kinds of things for the most part. But you have to learn it, and you have to learn what you feel comfortable doing, saying. But yeah, I don't feel the shame that I used to about being a bottom, because I'm not the only one. I'm not alone in my bottomness. And I, like I said, I've not had a problem finding the sex that I want when I want it, So
in the context of that dom sub relationship, how do you create, either by setting boundaries or through other means, like create the situation in which you can feel comfortable in that role where you can feel like you have that power?
Well, I had never been in that kind of relationship before I got into it. So looking back, I agreed to a lot of things that I had no idea what I was agreeing to. But I kept saying to myself through the process, even when I was like not knowing what was happening, always going like, okay, here's my choice. My choice is I can leave. Like he can ask me to do whatever. And my choice is to go, okay, either I accommodate this situation and stay here, or I go, no, I'm out. And that was my big power move, is realizing that's where I say no. If I say no, and then then the situation's over, right? But that's where my power really was, is I can end this right now. And knowing that, I think, really helped me make more informed decisions about, okay, what I was really willing to do and want. And with this person that I was feeling increasingly more comfortable with, and more I trusted him more and more. And of all the relationships I've been in my life, he was the person who invited me into his life the most. And I had been in long-term relationships with boyfriends and more traditional kinds of things. But this man like really invited me into his life, his world. There were the advantages of this situation were that, he had a husband who I knew and who I got along with really well. But like he said to me, I'm never going to be your husband. I'm never going to be your boyfriend. That's not what this is. Okay. That's the rule, and I get that. But because of the sexual situation that we were all in, there were no lies. There was no cheating. Right. And that was so freeing to be like, there's zero reason to lie about anything in this relationship. Also, because he had a husband, we never had the rent stew or the light bill didn't get paid or any of those
Right.
kinds of couple things that you might go through. We didn't have because he had a husband that he did that with. And so there were so many things about the relationship that I felt really that would have had no idea about without except being in it. That were like that. That were we don't cheat. We don't because there's none. It's just there isn't any. And I found that really, really refreshing and great.
Do you think that, like, did their primary partner, do you think that ever caused friction with them? Having your dom sub relationship alongside that?
No, I think because they already had like a relation, they already had a boundaries set out for themselves.
Yeah.
And they had kind of their sex life had evolved to where they weren't really having sex with each other that much unless they had a boy in common that they both wanted to be with. So that was just, they'd been together for a long time and that was how what they decided was what that worked for them. There were, and my master, he has more sex with more hot guys than anyone I've ever met. Like he likes variety. He has a revolving door. So there were the guys who were always coming in and out and new guys always coming in. And there was like me and he had another boy that was a regular, that was his other main regular. And then there ended up being like a third for a while. And then when things changed and like right now I am outside of that relationship and it's quite sad to me, but it's just the way things happened. It was nobody's fault. It was just the way of the world. But, I don't think that there was any jealousy within his marriage with that and certainly his husband and I got along really well. I was there, every weekend. I cooked for them. It was for that part of it, it was kind of run of the mill. It was kind of very regular in that it was groceries and cooking and watching movies and SNL on Saturday nights. It was quite
cute.
Yeah.
So it was beyond the bedroom. This was a relationship that definitely extended.
Yeah.
Yeah. Fascinating. What do you think you learned? Because having not been in a dom sub relationship like that, what do you think you learned about yourself through that experience?
One of the things that was really valuable to me was I had never been, or maybe I'd never felt valued as a sexual person in a relationship. I always felt like, sex was a part of it or whatever, but I never felt sexy. And that's more on me than on anybody I was with. That's just my own feelings about myself. And so to be in this relationship where the primary reason I was there was because he thought I was, and the reason that he wanted me to stay around was because he saw I was like, whenever I was there, I was in a thong. Like there was, that was my uniform when I was at their house. So that was really valuable to me, was to really feel like I am not just a sexual being, but I am a sexy being. I am desirable. That was really, really valuable to me. And I think everybody should feel that in their relationship. They are desired. So that was really important for me to realize, is that I am, even at my rapidly aging body, I'm a sexy person. I'm an attractive person. So that was probably the most valuable thing I got out of it, was realizing my own sexual potency. And the things that I thought maybe that I would never have done. I'll never do that. That's just disgusting. I did. And then was able to go like, okay, well, that I don't like, that I don't want to do again. But I experienced more things in the sexual catalog than I ever thought I would, and enjoyed more than I ever thought I would. Like things like being denied, or things like having threesomes or foursomes or group situations that maybe would have made me feel a little bit more uncomfortable in an environment where I knew, like, okay, I know these people. It's one thing to be in a sex party situation where you're just, everybody's anonymous and So you can kind of be put on a character or something, or, be whoever you want to be. But when people know you, that's a little bit different level of comfort and a different level of agency. And so that was just something else too, is be like, wow, this is someone who I know likes me, and I know who likes this.
Amen. But how do you find guys, because I hear that message, you want to feel sexy. How do you find guys who make you feel sexy?
I mean, there is no other way to there, it's all kind of trial and error. I mean, one of the things that happened to me kind of recently about that is I think like my own desirability, it goes up and down. How you feel about yourself. Oh, I gained 5 pounds and now I'm just gay obese. And, like,
I know.
5 pounds and it's over. I'm never going to have sex again. And I had someone recently say to me, like, I was saying, like, oh, I'm not really getting together with anybody right now because I just feel so fat. And he was like, well, I want you to do whatever you need to do to feel sexy. I'm on board with you feeling sexy. But our connection is more than what you look like. And that was really valuable for me to hear because I so can just be like, oh, I have to have muscles. I have to have washboard abs or else I'm not viable. And that's not true. And that's something I'm learning still every day. That's something I'm battling all the time, being like, no, maybe the least attractive thing about me is that I beat myself up so much. It has nothing to do with what I look like.
Ain't that the rub, right? It's like, that's the worst part about it is people, that's the thing that turns people off sometimes. You're like, gosh darn it. Like, it's like, you're damned if you do, damned if you do. It feels impossible, And if you project too much confidence, then people, of course, think you're, cocky or arrogant.
Then you're stuck up. Remember saying that? Oh,
yeah.
Thing in grade school. You're so stuck up.
Or a brat, to use the term everyone's using right now.
Conceited. That was the other one we used to say when we were in junior high. She's so conceited.
Yeah, exactly. Oh my God. I love it. Is there an experience that you could think of, or multiple perhaps, that jump out as you as like, this was the best sex? This is like the best sex of my life?
There are two that I think of. One was with the master early in our relationship. Because I was so inexperienced about I didn't know what to do. And so I was relying heavily on him telling me what to do. I would get so excited. I remember this a couple of times when I couldn't speak. I was so concentrating on trying to do the right thing and trying to be pleasing and trying to listen to what he was telling me to do. And I remember him saying, like, boy, you have to answer me. You have to use your words, and me just being so turned on and everything that I couldn't speak. So that, and I can't tell you what was happening. I couldn't tell you what he said to me. I just remember that feeling of being so overcome. And the second one, is the best sex party I ever went to. I went to a sex party like 2 years ago. I haven't been to one since, and here's why. I went to the sex party and I was like the belle of the ball. I don't know why, but I was like very, very popular that day, and I had a great time until 2 days later, monkey. The sex party that gave me monkeypox, and monkeypox was painful. It was awful. It was embarrassing. I mean, monkeypox was more, for me, I felt more embarrassed than chlamydia or gonorrhea. Like, what's a little chlamydia between friends? But monkeypox that was a time when I felt like I should a little bit of shame about how I got it and knowing that it was that. But I'm easing up. I'm having sex party ideas popping into my head, so that might be coming up in the fall is my return.
Ah, the belle of the ball returns. Down the steps of the parasol, ready for the party. I love it. And I don't want to dwell too much on Mpox because, it's just one of those things. But I know a lot of people probably don't know anyone who ever had it. Like, what was that experience like for you?
It was awful. I wrote about it for thebody.com. You can find it. partly too because of because of kind of sex I like. It was in my rectum. And so I was having such pain, and I was on like 2 different kinds of painkillers because I was in such pain about it. At the same time, a friend of mine who's a top was going through it. So his junk was all messed up, and mine was opposite. But it was helpful to have a friend who was going through it at the same time. And because it made me feel a little bit less shameful and less alone about it. And this was right when it was all happening. It was 2 years ago when the outbreak happened. Before they hadn't even, I think they were doing limited vaccines and stuff like that because they didn't have enough of it and all those kinds of things. But it affected me a lot, and it was very painful. One of the most painful things. And I've had like 2 hip replacements. I've had a lot of different surgeries, and this was incredibly, incredibly painful.
Well, I'm so sorry that happened. I'm glad you got through it. I had a good friend who had it at the same time as you, and he was texting me updates regularly because I think he didn't have anyone to talk to. So he really needed somebody to sound off who he could trust to not judge him, because the judgment was insane at the time.
Absolutely.
It was like, I mean, as someone who lived through the 80s, do you feel like, were you seeing parallels with HIV?
Absolutely. When I went to the emergency room, because my doctor said, go to the emergency room. And I went to the emergency room at Bellevue because he recommended, he goes, that's where they first started finding cases of Mpox, so go there. The doctor came in a hazmat suit.
Oh.
And I hadn't seen that since, I'd never experienced that before. But I'd certainly seen it in movies and stuff when they talked about early in the AIDS crisis. And I was shocked. It made sense because they didn't know they didn't know what they didn't know. It was like COVID. But I just never experienced that before. And it was shocking. And it did feel like the shame that also doubled up the shame. It's like, wow, a doctor doesn't even feel safe.
Yeah. I can only imagine the feelings in the body as that is happening. That is wild. Well, I'm glad you're on the other side of that. I hope you make your return to the ball.
I'll let you know. I'll let you know.
Definitely. If you had to, even the power, like the Thanos glove of sex, to just like snap your fingers and like fantasy becomes reality, like what would that fantasy look like for you?
I don't know. It's kind of changed a lot. Since the sort of dissolving of the relationship with the master, which I didn't expect to have the feelings that I have still even about him. Because that's not something that you think about when you're going into like this sex relationship, that you're going to end up having feelings. And I have big feelings. So I think that when I realized that relationship was kind of over, it's like, well, one of the things I liked about it was knowing that I was liked. And that it was liked for multiple reasons, that it was, it was partly about what I looked like, partly about, that I've got guns, but I didn't always. I'm the fat guy. So I always feel like I'm the fat kid. So that's why I'm like, no, look, I'm not anymore. But to be valued in several different ways was really eye-opening, because I never had felt that in other relationships. So I think that the being desired and feeling that you're desired and also honored outside of as a whole person. That's what I'm kind of looking for now. And it almost sounds romantic, which makes me want to throw up. But because I don't know if I believe in like marriage for myself. Like, I don't know if that's in my cards. I kind of don't think so. But I look for relationships now, or I look for experiences now where I feel that it's more than just my sex. So right now, I one of the questions you had on the thing is like your sluttiest moment. I'm like, I have so many, but the sluttiest thing you've ever done. But right now, and as someone who is a self-proclaimed slut, and that like I like to have sex with a lot of people. Right now, I'm not. I'm seeing two people, really only one, and it's just sex, and but I know that he knows me outside of our sex, and that we have had other experiences, and I feel like I'm a whole person. So I'm not just this superficial thing, but I feel like he likes me in more ways than one.
Over time, you've been able to reveal more of yourself in these sex relationships?
It depends on the person. Yeah, I do. And on what the person, like, some people, you finish with sex and they're out the door, or they're kicking you out the door, depending where you are. But and those, like, I have realized too, like, even those moments of those connections with people sexually, where that's all it is, I can really feel a measure of connection. And I hate to use love; that's a weird word. I think it's so loaded, but a real connection and affection and caring, even in a situation that is fleeting and I'll never see this person again.
Yeah.
I've been able to find that and find it very valuable. And like, this is how I'm connecting with humanity. And I think it's it's as valid as anything else.
Yeah.
So, and with the people that I'm seeing right now that I do have a bigger, broader connection with, that know me in ways outside of just, my ass. Yeah, I think that I've gotten a much more richer experience from that, because I don't have to leave right away. We can have connections outside. I can run into them on the street and it's not awkward.
Yeah. Yeah. And I feel like that some of that just comes with age, like remembering myself and when I was younger, and you think about what was best sex when you were 22, and you would, I don't know, would you probably answer that question differently then?
Sure. Partly just because of experience, not having had it. And I was so insecure.
Yeah.
I was incredibly insecure. And partly it's our own, sometimes as gay men, we're mean to each other, and I'm looking for anybody to have sex with but you.
Yeah.
I feel that way sometimes. Right? No fat, no femmes, no, like, I'm looking for a swimmer, straight acting swimmer's build.
The swimmer build. I cannot with that. Like, what does that even mean?
Like, what, we can't all date Greg Louganis, Come on. And yeah, like, but, and also I think, like, I've had washboard apps. I don't right now. And it's hard to go like, okay, but am I still sexy even though I've got a little gut, It's really, we're so mean to each other, I think about it. And I down myself before someone else does, but then I'm beating myself up.
Yeah.
Out of this weird way of trying to protect myself. So I don't know that I like good sex when you're 22 is so fleeting, because you're so horny all the damn time at 22. The wind blows and you're like, we're going to find somebody. And so it's kind of nice to be able to make choices when you're a little bit older, and be like, you know what? I don't need to have sex with this person because he's fair and offering.
Right.
And I can decide who I want to have sex with now. I think that's, and the experience out, if I want a sex party experience, or if I want, a threesome experience, or if I just want to connect with this one person.
Choosiness is a virtue, and it's hard to practice sometimes when you're horny.
Right. When you're horny and you don't feel good about yourself.
Even worse. Yeah.
So then you're going to make choices that maybe aren't the best for you. Or for that person even, really. But yeah, I've done that a lot too.
Well, you already sort of gave a preview, but I always like to end with my favorite question, Sordid Lives and Untold Tales, which is short for a slut. What is the sluttiest thing you've ever done?
There's a top 10 probably list. I mean, somewhat. Sex parties are certainly a slutty thing, by definition. When there's a place you're going in, and there's clothes check. That's a pretty slutty situation. But I think once I realized that that I like to have sex and that was okay, some people might think that that's slutty just because I'm having agency about about the sex that I want and the sex that I have, and that it's okay to want to have wanton sex. I think that's probably the sluttiest thing I've ever done, is realizing that it's okay to be a slut, and I'm not a slut alone, right? Like you can't be a slut by yourself. By definition, you have to include other people.
Amen. That's so true.
And I think that that's probably the sluttiest thing I've done, is that realizing that it's okay to be a slut, and to not feel shame about it. Like, no, guess what? Yeah, I'm wearing my shirt unbuttoned. Do you know why? Because I'm a gay man. Like, and I've got a nice chest, and I'm going to show it off while I got it. That's that's probably the sluttiest thing. It's not an action, but more of an attitude.
I live. That is fabulous.
I slept there 4 a.m.
I slept there 4 a.m. Well, that is a fabulous place to wrap it up. Thank you, Charles. If people want to know more about, of course, if people want to know more about you, and where can they find you on the internet?
Well, I'm a contributing editor for thebody.com. So I do a lot of content for them, including hosting a twice monthly Instagram live, where I talk to people from the LGBTQ and HIV communities from across the country and various different. So I've talked to Craig Louganis several times. I've talked to other kind of HIV celebrities like Mondo Guerra and Andre Shields and Javier Munoz. But I've also talked to people who are working on the boots on the ground at Planned Parenthood in Colorado or at HIV organizations across the country. I also write for Pause Magazine. So you can find me on the Instagrams and on the Facebooks. I am Fabulous Sanchez on Instagram. I'm also on X, but I'm not really on X because I think
we're all piecing out.
Yeah. And I just that dude is weird. And so that's where you can find me, is on Facebook and on Instagram mostly. I'm on Threads too, but I'm not really on Threads. Also, I have a web series that's still out there in the world called Merce. It's a musical comedy about a guy living with HIV who isn't sad, sick, or dying. And we did 2 seasons of it. So that's out there, MERCE. You can find it on YouTube or on Vimeo or on our website, mercetheseries.com. Is there anything else? I think that's about it. But yeah, you can find out more about me online, and you can Google me and you'll find out other crazy stuff.
Fabulous. Well, thank you so much, Charles. I really appreciate it. And thanks for being a slut. That's our show for today. Thank you so much for listening, as always. And remember, if you aren't having the best sex of your life, I can help. My services as a sex coach can help you identify and overcome obstacles that are standing between you and your best sex life. Find out more on my website, thebestgaysex.net. Till next time.